Hi, I'm Kristen. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the Pfaff Quilt Expression 720. I've owned this machine for about 8 months now. Some of you may have seen a previous video where I talked about the machine I owned before and the trouble I had with it. It was a Bernina. If you're interested, I'll put the link in the description or up above, but I'm not going to go into that again. And there's also a whole other debate in the comments of that video about whether or not the issue I had was with that model of machine or just with that machine itself, because it was the next display. So anyway, I'm not talking about that in this one. So I've actually had loads of people asking me to do this review on the back of the other video. And I kept saying, well, I'm going to wait until I've used it a bit longer, meaning that I was, wanting to use all the features that are in it because there's lots in it. And I still haven't used all the features. So I've been a bit reticent to do this video, but I've had lots of people messaging me and asking me for it. So I decided, well, I'll just tell you my impressions at 8 months. And if I then use some features later on that I haven't actually tried yet, then maybe I could do an update or something. But so I'm going to have timestamps, chapters in the description so that you can find whatever it is that you're looking for. If there's a specific element of the machine that I might not talk about everything, obviously, but if there's a specific thing you're looking for to hear what I have to say about, then you can look in those timestamps to try and find that. But I hope you don't skip this first bit, which is the caveats, okay? So the caveats are, 1, I am not a sewing machine expert, okay? I've done some sewing throughout my life, but I've only really seriously used a sewing machine most weeks or most days since 2020. And this is only the 4th sewing machine I've ever owned. So, my range of experience with sewing machines is not huge. Okay, so, and this is the only Pfaff I've ever sewn on. So I don't have a reference for any other models or for any other machines of the same model, right? So this is just my machine, but I did buy this one new. So this was not an X display. It's not some sort of lemon machine or anything like that. So that'd be the first caveat. The other one is that I am a quilter. So I use this machine mostly for piecing. I now have a long arm. So although I have done free motion quilting, things like that on domestic machines before, and I've done a little bit of it on this one, I bought the long arm not long after I bought this. So I haven't done a heap of free motion quilting on this, and I don't do any garment sewing. So if you're looking for a review of features for garment sewing, there is, I think, another video. I'm afraid I can't remember the channel name, but I think I saw it maybe when I was researching this. And there was a woman who did a review of this machine, and she was primarily coming from a garment sewing background. So you might look for that. I do sometimes make bags and small upholstery, like cushion covers and small upholstery projects, but I don't do garment sewing, so I can't speak to that. I also bought my machine without my own money. It wasn't gifted, and I'm not associated with Pfaff. Okay, so caveats covered. I am going to just go over what I like about the machine, what I don't like, and just get into it, basically. Overall, to start off with, I have much less trouble with this machine than my last one. So if you are a regular channel viewer and you're wondering, so my last machine, I just had a whole heap of issues and errors and stuff like that. This one, I don't tend to get that. There's a few niggles. It's not perfect. I don't think any machine probably is, but I'm definitely overall happier with this one than my last one. But I've made a note. I'm just going to go look at my phone and then edit back so I can just check what I've written down. What are the pros and what are the cons that I wanted to point out to you? One of the big pros for me is that the Pfaff doesn't need oil. The Quilt Expression 720 doesn't need oiling. So a lot of machines do. My long arm does, so I've gotten used to doing it on that, but this one does not. It's like a self-lubricating system of some kind, and I think they might check that when it gets its annual service and stuff like that, but you don't need to put any oil in it. So I do quite like that. One of the things that was a con when I started using it and is now a plus is the speed. So it's got 3 speed settings, or it might be more than 3, but 3 easy press speed settings. I think it might have more variation within that, but basically when you turn it on, it starts on the highest speed. And I haven't been able to, if anybody knows the speed of this machine, how many stitches per minute, if you could put it in the comments, because I've tried to find it online, I can't find it. anywhere. It's not in the manual or anything. I think it's definitely faster than the previous machine I used though. So I found that quite overwhelming when I first used it. So I was turning it down, but I've now gotten used to it. And now I'm going, I could go faster actually. So, but it is fast, but I can't tell you how fast it is because I can't find that. Anyway, I haven't found a way to like lock it on a speed. There must be a way, or if there isn't, then that's a con. But I also haven't spent the time really looking into it because I've since gotten used to just sewing at the fastest speed. Here's a bit of scrap. Here's another bit of scrap. And we will just sew it. So I've just turned it on. So the needle down is not on. So I'm going to press it. And then it's on the highest speed. So this is it. And I bet you that camera was shaking. I'm not sure. If you hit it once, it goes slower. And no, hit it again, it goes back up to normal. Now I think if you hold it, you can change it more. So you can have it go medium fast or whatever, or super slow. But of course you can also control that with the foot pedal. So I'll just put it back. No, I didn't want to do that. Okay, put it back up to normal. So then I've got the foot pedal, right? So this is me with the foot pedal down. And then this is it. Hang on. Just, I can control it and make it go that slowly just with the foot pedal. So this, it's quite, the pedal's quite responsive is what I'm saying. So that is, so I like that. So coupled with that, one of the slight cons is that it shakes a bit, the machine. Now, I don't know if I would notice that shaking as much if it wasn't in this table. So it's in a horn table to give me a flatbed, and I've had this insert cut to fit the shape of the machine. So it does shake a little bit, and I've had, like particularly for me, I've had videos where I've had the stand sitting here with the camera on it, and it shook so much when it was sewing that I got a bad video from it. So it's obviously not an issue for most people, but so that was a bit of a something. I've got a little, where's this mat from? Oh, So Easy mat underneath it to try and dampen some of that shaking. And I don't notice it that much myself other than when I'm recording, but that is something, like if that's annoying then to you, then that's something to keep in mind. It does have a bobbin sensor, just like the last machine that I had. So it tells you when the bobbin's running low. I still think it does that a little bit earlier than I need it to, but on the plus side, there is, because the bobbin is on the plate of the machine, and it's got a little magnifying glass kind of on the top of it. Let me mark it out here. So you can kind of look in and see that you still have some thread left. So if you're just like, you can peek under and check if you can still finish your row of stitches or whatever you're doing. So you've got more of a visual on how much you actually have left, and it's kind of, I guess the sensor's telling you to look. So it's more useful maybe than the one I had before, I guess. But it's still a tad on the early side, I feel like. Anyway, so that is the magnifying glass. It's hard, the light's kind of shining on it, but that is where you can see whether your bobbin's actually run out. Another thing that's like a tiny niggle, it's not a big deal, is that it's a bit curved, the base of the machine here, and I'll show you another little bit clip of that. And so when it's not in this table and you've got the free arm, you've not got the free arm out, you've got the little case thing that goes on it, it's very curved. Now that might be useful for some things, maybe for bag making, or I'm not sure. But even with the insert on the horn table, I don't feel like it's as super flat as it could be because of that curve. And I'll show you that in a video. I'll show you what I mean about where it doesn't quite rest super flat. So this is the curve of the machine that I was talking about. If I take this out. So it kind of curves like that. And then it's got this that came with it, which is the cabinet thing. And I've lost the top of it. So I always have it in this, So I always have it in this cabinet, right? And this fits on under here. You still see? Yeah. So this fits on here, and then there's this fits in here for your bobbins and things, but I've got other stuff in it, so that's supposed to go there. This is the back here, and then where's the front? I've lost the front. Yeah. So it's got a front here that continues this curve, right? I can't find it. I don't use it because I keep this as a cabinet basically in my drawer. So it comes with a bunch of feet. Some of these feet I've bought, and this is a total mess. I just keep it a mess. Sorry. So this is like a clear foot one. So you can get comes with some metal feet, and then you can buy other feet, and then you can also buy clear ones, and they're cheaper. However, I broke one, clear one, that one. I can't remember what I did to it. So these are cheaper, but they're less robust. But the metal ones are fine. And these are not all the feet because some of them are in here. That's the other plate. That's the wide stitch plate. You can obviously see on your dealer's website or whatever what feet it comes with. And my dealer threw in a ruler foot that I really wanted, so that was like an extra that he threw in, and then I haven't used it much because I've not been doing a lot of free motion quilting on here. But anyway, the stitches themselves are really good. I like that you can change your needle position quite a bit in each direction. So if you're doing something like the edge of a binding and you want to get just on that very edge, like for machine binding, which is what I do, that can be quite useful. So you can use a range of different feet for zippers. If you're putting a zipper on a bag or something, you can kind of move that needle position over by just the tiniest bit, and it makes a big difference. So I quite like that. It's got comes with two stitch plates, so a straight one and a wide one. So same as with any machine, you'd need the straight stitch plate on for just your regular quilt piecing, so that you don't get any bits of fabric coming down or whatever. And there is a sensor on the machine, so it does know when you've removed the straight stitch plate. So I think I had an issue with my previous machine where I thought it was going to know and I had to tell it when I changed the stitch plate. But this one knows, so it locks all the stitches that you can't use with either plate, whichever one it is. So if you have the straight stitch plate on, it won't let you choose a zigzag or an alphabet or a wide stitch or something like that. You cannot do it. So I have broken less needles with this machine because my previous one, I guess I just didn't understand that I had to tell it. And so I would, have the straight stitch plate on and try to do a zigzag and bust the needle. So so if you have that issue, this might be good for you. In order to change the stitch plate, so this is something I'm not massively keen on. You need to use the screwdriver to like pry it up. It's easy enough. And there is let me show you. Ooh. There is the warning that says straight stitch needle plate's been removed. Stitch with safety is still active. Touch OK to deactivate stitch with safety. Touch cancel to keep stitch with safety. Blah, it's a mouthful. Anyway, so that's the choice you have. And then you can remove all of this and clean under the bobbin case. I've done that recently. And then you can pop the other one back on. I'm just going to put the straight one back on. And then it goes in the back, and then you pop it down, and then it's fine. That warning goes away. So I do, I like that it has the sensor and everything else. I don't love that if I lost this, I would have to find something else to pry it up with. I would prefer I know there's some machines where you press a button and it kind of pops and then you can pick it up, but those are probably even more expensive machines than this one. So yeah, you can't have everything. And the other thing that this machine has is the built-in IDT, I think it's called. I will put on the screen what that stands for because I cannot remember. But it's basically like, I'm going to say integrated dual feed, but that would be an F. Anyway, it's like a built-in walking foot essentially. So you put it on the back, I'll show you, of some of the feet, but not all of the feet. And it kind of helps to feed the fabric more evenly under your foot. So if you're doing something thick or for a quilt, that would be, if you're quilting, that's quite useful. So I like that I haven't even, I think you can buy a walking foot for it, but I haven't done that. I possibly should, because one of the cons that I have for it is I don't feel like this machine can deal with a whole bunch of heavy materials and things like that. So there is something in the marketing of it where they show them using layers and layers of denim, and they're using that IDT. And I have done denim quilt blocks on this. That's been fine. But the things where I've struggled is when I've tried to do a bit of bag making with some thicker fabrics, and I also, when I was sewing with fleece randomly, which is confusing to me because fleece, while it's a little bit thick, I usually find it quite easy to sew through. But I was getting a lot of broken threads when I was sewing some things with fleece. Not every time, but some of the time. And it might be that I need to change a tension setting or something like that. And I can be a bit lazy with that. If the stitches look okay, I don't tend to touch the tension. I hardly ever, I never touch the tension on this. The only time when I've considered touching the tension is when I was trying to do some free motion quilting on denim. Now again, I know that's not a normal use case, but anyway, I was trying to do that and I was getting broken threads and it just wasn't working out. So but it was fine for straight stitch quilting. Anyway, so I haven't done, as I said, I've not done a lot of free motion quilting on this. I probably should have persisted and tried a bit harder with it, but because I have the long arm, I've just not put the time in to figure out whether I need to change the tension on it or whatever. So that's where, again, one of those things where it's like, I don't feel particularly qualified to give a great review on this, since I haven't even, as a quilter, I haven't even tried using this machine for one of the things it's probably mostly going to get used for from a quilter. But anyway, that's where we are. So one thing I have used, both in quilts and in other projects, is a lot of the decorative stitches. It's got tons of decorative stitches, this machine. And I talked about, in one of my vlogs ages ago, I talked about how there's a thing in this machine called the Stitch Creator, where you can kind of take bits of those decorative stitches, or any stitch, and you can sort of program them together into a sequence and make your own stitch, essentially, or your own pattern. And you can make your own, so you don't have to just use elements of their stitches. You can also kind of move if you're really good at this kind of thing, move the stitch points and actually change the stitch itself. There's another video from somebody else who explains this much better. I'm going to put it in the description. But anyways, me and my son played around with it for his first quilt, and he came up with a whole stitch pattern, and we used it to quilt his first quilt, and it was really cute because he felt like he really created it. So I quite liked that. I also like that you can have it remember stitches and patterns of stitches. So not only can we save his stitch, you can also, so things like if I wanted to program the alphabet, and there's loads of alphabets in this, to say, quilt made by Kristen Hubert, Edinburgh 2023, or whatever I would put, something standard I would put on a quilt label, I can program it to do that so that I don't have to type it in every single time. So that's cool. You can also change the size of the alphabet letters quite a bit. You can make them quite big and quite small. And there's more than one alphabet. I think I normally use the Comic Sans one, which is kind of like a bit more cute. It's not like kids one, but it's just a little bit more of a casual letters. But they also have the more like calligraphy ones and the more classic ones and things like that. So I like that. I also really like the ones, they've got some decorative stitches that look a bit like cross stitch or something. And I think those look kind of cool on some things. So I'll show you some of those. But I haven't tried all of the decorative stitches. And one of the things that this machine is really known for is that you can do these really big, extra wide stitches. I haven't had a use case for them yet, so I haven't done that yet. So this is the stitches. That's sort of normal ones. So I don't use all of these. I've used some of them. These, I quite like the way these look when you stitch them out. These are cool. And then there's just loads. And then these are the maxi ones, the great big huge ones that are quite wide, which I haven't used yet. And then there's monograms. ribbon stitches. Like, these look cool. I wanted to try these, but I haven't tried them yet. There's this frame thing. Okay, yeah, I know. I didn't mean to choose those. Okay, and then these are the saved ones. So this is the personal menu. So that's my son's one. Oops, okay, yeah, I know. Right, so it's telling me I can't do that because I've got the straight stitch on, which is fine. But that's my son's saved one. That one is my name. That one says mummy or something like that so that I can use it again. So I quite like that. And I haven't even used the second menu. So there's plenty of space. Okay. For alphabets, this is the one I normally use. There's just, it's like with any of these computerized machines, there's a lot on it that maybe I don't strictly need. I could play with it, and I should because I paid the money for it, but there's loads in it. So my kind of learning cycle with these machines is like the first month or so. I really spend time looking at videos, looking at the manual, playing with all the different things, and then I just get on with what I want to do. So I don't necessarily, if I didn't do it in the first month and I don't have a reason to try it, then I won't. So that's maybe a fault with me with these machines, that I had all the intentions to do one of those stitch books, you know, where you stitch out everything and you learn every bit of your machine, and then I never did it. So yeah, so that's where I'm saying my caveat with this review is that I really have not used all of the functions of the machine. I've just I wanted a machine that I could reliably use to do what I wanted to do, because my last one, again, whether it was the model or the particular machine, when I just wanted to piece, I was having issues, even when I wasn't trying to do anything fancy or anything with super thick fabric. So that was my issue there. And this one definitely causes me less trouble with that. So one of the other things I really like about this machine is that you can set it to needle down position all the time. I would love to know if there was a way for me to set it like that always, but I haven't seen that. Now, maybe I haven't looked into it enough, but I have to press it every time I turn the machine on, right? So it'll go needle down, and then the foot does the hover thing, which I quite like. You might have, if you've seen my videos before, you might have seen me talking about that. So when you stop, the needle's down, the foot hovers, and then you can rotate whatever you're sewing if you want, which I often want to do for various reasons. So I quite like that function, and I almost always hit the needle down to do that. Oh, the other thing I like, which I will also show you, is that you can press for the foot to lift twice. So there's one to lift the foot. You can also press it to go down, but then you can press it again and it lifts the foot a little bit higher and it drops the feed dogs, so that if you're putting something in there that's catching on the bottom, you don't get that. So that's quite, and it just lifts the feed dogs long enough for you to put it in. Once you start sewing, they come back up and do their feeding thing. If you want to drop them to do free motion, that's something else, and you set that up yourself. There's also a stop-start button, so I can use this machine in the way that I like to with my kids, where they're on my knees, they're too short to get to the pedals, but they can press the stop-start, so that's good. It's got the automatic thread cutter, which I do use, and it also has a button where you can press it to, if you're doing something that is a pattern, so like one of those decorative stitches, or like an alphabet sequence where you're stitching out someone's name or something like that, you can press for it to just do one pattern repeat, so you don't have to watch for the next the next letter to come. Like if you're writing by Kristen Hubert, and then you don't have to wait for the T, you know, and before it starts just stitching by again, you know. I've had that before with previous machines anyway. And you can also set it to do an automatic knotting, like at the beginning, so it does like an automatic reverse stitch. So I have it set for that, and I also have it set to do an automatic tie off when I cut the thread, which I quite like. Now, I don't know if it's one of those settings that is throwing something off though. Sometimes, and not always, which is annoying, it doesn't stitch the first few stitches of a row of something, of like piecing. So maybe that's, I usually don't use leaders and enders, and that would probably catch that if I did. I don't like using them so much. So it's not an issue at all with chain piecing or anything like that. Where I've noticed it the most is when I have done some straight line quilting on this machine. And so I'm just feeding a whole thing through, do one long line, and then I go to the top, and the first 3 or 4 inches of the row are not stitched. It started like a little bit later. So it did start stitching. It just didn't stitch right when I thought we'd started, basically. And I don't know that I have video of it. I'll try to recreate it, but it doesn't happen every time, but it does happen often enough that I'm like, what is that? And so I just go back and stitch over those, but it's a little bit annoying. And it might be that it's a setting. So as with my previous machine, I am not a particular persnickety person. So if I can't figure it out intuitively and it's not bugging me too much, I'm probably not going to spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, because I just want to get on and sew. It's my relaxation time. It's my chill out time. And I just, yeah. So I haven't researched into whether there's something I could be doing to prevent that happening, but I've noticed it a few times. So the other thing that I thought was a selling point, but I don't love now is and again, it don't bother me that much. It's just a little bit, right? Is that it's got various settings for the reverse stitch, okay? Okay, here's the issue with the reverse. So let's try if I just hold it. So if I just hold it, it reverses and does a tie off. Now you might want that. That might be what you want. So that's great. And then it turns off. Look, so maybe that's what I should be doing. So what I've done though is done that, and then it goes in reverse and it keeps going in reverse. And then it stays on reverse. So it's just in reverse, right? And then with both of them, goes in reverse and does the tie off. And then you have to press it again to turn that off. So I don't know, it's just a lot of options. It's a little confusing, but there's a lot of options could be good if you learn them properly. So that's that. So as far as I know, you can't just hold and release, which is what I would do on all my previous machines. You just hold the reverse and do your back stitch and then let it go, and then it would stitch forward again. This one, it feels like, so you hit it and it's on reverse. So it's like in reverse, and until you hit another one again, it comes off. The thing is, there's two other settings. Anyway, it's too many reverse stitches for me. I can't figure it out. I could sit and read and figure it all out, and I did at the beginning, and I thought I understood it, but I do often enough come and start sewing and find that it's in reverse when I didn't mean it to be, or something like that. So I would prefer it to be more of like a manual kind of reverse, a simpler one. But I'm sure there would be times when there's a reason they've put it in the machine. People must have asked for it or liked the function of that. So let me know in the comments if I'm just missing a trick on this. Okay, the only other things that I think I would mention, and I know I'm not being like effusive about it, but I am happy with it, okay? But I do want to point out the things that are little niggles in case there'd be big niggles for other people. So one of the other things I've noticed is, and I think I've adjusted it, and so it's not happening as often now, but at the beginning, the power cable was coming out the side quite a bit. And that was annoying when you're in the middle of sewing. And it might be more to do with my horn table, but I've shifted it a bit more over and it's not happening as much, but occasionally that still happens. The power cable feels a tiny bit loose, or a tiny bit like if you just knock it, it comes out. But yeah, if you didn't have it in a table or you kind of play with it, it's not a big deal, just a tiny thing, okay? It does have a needle threader, which is pretty easy to use. It, like a lot of needle threaders, it only comes out with a tiny bit of thread at the back, so it can still sometimes feel a tiny bit fiddly, but it's a standard needle threader and it works fine. So my biggest con with it is that I don't feel confident putting thick things through it. I've had enough times where it's made a kind of jerky noise or broken needle on thicker fabrics, thicker things I'm doing. Again, that's less likely I don't think that's ever been a quilt project. I think it's always been like a bag making or an upholstery thing or something like that. So it might not be what it's meant for. And my biggest plus with it is, even when there have been errors or things that don't work, it doesn't completely throw the machine off or break everything. Like, I can take out any loose threads. There's a little piece in the front that you can remove. So even if some thread gets caught on the sort of take up lever thing, I think that's what it's called. The thing, see, I'm not a sewing machine expert. The thing you thread your thread on, you can just take the thing off and unravel it yourself. You don't have to like unscrew the side of the machine or anything like that. So that's useful. And I just don't feel like, other than with the thick materials, it doesn't feel as fragile as the machine I used last. But it doesn't feel as robust either as the Janome, that's my backup one, which is the one the kids use. So that one, like when this one was breaking threads all the time when I was sewing with fleece, which again could be a needle issue, could be a thread issue, could be a tension issue, and I didn't mess with any of that. But I got out my Janome 4300, or I'll put the correct thing of it on the screen. It just handles it fine, and I don't have that issue, and it's maybe less of a fancy computerized machine. So one of the things that I learned from the last video I did on my last machine, and again, I think I said in that video, and I'll say it again now, that I'm quite a novice with this, and I'm not an expert with these machines, as I probably naively thought at that point that you could buy one fancy machine and it would do everything for you. And quite a few people in the comments corrected me of that notion. And they have, you know, loads and loads of machines. Now, we don't all have space for that. I don't have space for that. And lots of places, people have less space than me. But they were talking a lot about, they have one machine for this function, one machine for another one. So they would have like an embroidery machine and a straight stitch machine and a heavy duty machine and a serger and whatever. So I now have the long arm for the bulk of my quilting, which is why I have not fully investigated free motion quilting on the Pfaff. I do other smaller quilted projects on here fine though. So like what would be walking foot quilting, except I'm using the IDT, I'm not using a walking foot. But anyway, all of those comments, reading those, and they're still coming in now, did get my brain going and had me looking at other things. So I haven't bit the bullet on it yet, but I am considering in the future getting a more of a heavy duty straight stitch machine, one of those sort of semi-industrial ones like the Janome HD9 or something like that. And that would be for me to be able to basically throw anything under it, which is the kind of thing I like to do. If you're just sewing with quilting cotton, that's probably not needed. But like, I like to do things with denim, and I've been playing with velvet and fleece. I definitely like using, and I was trying to sew like one of these prim basket bag bottoms on a bag. Like, so I had a quilted panel and this prim basket bottom, and I was trying to sew it on this, and it was making funny noises and breaking needles. It didn't like that. So things like, I would not feel confident, and please let me know if you've used yours for this and I'm just need to change a setting or something, because I'd love to use this, but I would not feel confident using this for like a proper rope, you know, like those rag rugs you do with rope or things like that. I would just, I feel like it might struggle. Now, I haven't tried it, but I'm also nervous to break it. So yeah, so I'd love to know if you have this machine and you've used it for more heavy duty things like that. And if there's something in the settings you changed or you used a different kind of needle or thread, that would be super helpful, not just for me, but for anybody else who's looking at this. Do check the comments, because more knowledgeable people will comment just like they did in the last video. So this is just my personal thoughts and opinions about this. Just because I'm on YouTube does not mean I'm more of an expert than anybody else, and that's true of anyone on YouTube. So unless they're giving you some other reason why they're qualified to tell you something, you know, their opinion is as good as your friend in the quilting guild group that you go to or whatever. And that's the only type of opinion. If I'm giving you the same opinion I would give you if we were sitting for a coffee at a quilt guild meeting. And that's all I can do. So I'm not going to pretend that I am a sewing machine expert or Pfaff expert or anything like that. There are other people more qualified to do that for you. And I'm going to link to some different Pfaff videos in the description if you want to see some other opinions or some other expertise and stuff like that, because I know it's an expensive machine and I don't want you, you know, basing your buying decision on me. I'm happy to help and give you my impression. But I think you should do research wider than watching this video, is what I'm saying. Okay. So I hope that's been somewhat useful. I'm sorry that it took me so long to make the video. I know a lot of you have been asking me, and I hope you're not disappointed that there are features I didn't talk about, but you know, I think that is the reality with any fancy machine like this. It's unlikely that you're going to use everything in it. So you want to prioritize the things that you really need from a machine, and then maybe not get as distracted by all the other fancy bits that it can do, because you may never get around to using those. So focus on your key items that you need from a machine to make you feel happy with it and get on with your sewing. And then go to your dealer and have them help you pick out the ones that have those criteria. That would be my advice. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you like videos like this or scrap quilts, which is what I do most of the time, then do subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.